Hello, everybody. I am Matten Van Buren, and he is a Brandham Lincoln. We are the Socially Awkwards. Welcome to Cape Pod. We've got a great episode for our audience today. Today, we're going to discuss the 2024 U.S. presidential election. We're going to talk about what the polls said. We're going to talk about the results. We're going to talk about the demography of the results, and we're going to look at comparisons to the 2020 election. So we're going to dive into all kinds of data. I love data. And we also got a new segment that we're going to get to, too. So that should be exciting. Hey, Brandham, I have a question for you. First of all, I love that name. Is that Dutch,
A
perhaps?
Norwegian. No relation to John Ham.
So like a
Great actor.
Viking, an old Viking name? Could be.
Yeah, Leaf, do you know?
Yeah, or Dorf. I was going to say, I thought maybe like you were related to Dorf of Brandham. Sounds like a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He fought in a revolution of some kind. I think it was over an iceberg. All right. I have a question for you. Do you realize that we have, as of today, in news, and it's pretty much just like across all platforms, blue means Democrat, red means Republican. Do you know what year that started?
No, but should I guess? Well, my guess might be really ignorant.
That's
I will
up to
take
you
a
if
guess.
you want to guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the fact you asked me makes me think it's newer. So I don't know. Is that like an 80s thing
I
or
would
something?
picture
Yeah.
picture an
1985, the year I was born.
well, I was gonna say choose an election year because it was most likely they were doing it on an election year.
But maybe they started campaigning, the year
I got
before
you.
or whatever, so.
Actually, they first started doing this in 2000. Only 25 years ago was when they like literally across. There were other news places doing it in certain platforms that were doing it, but universally, it wasn't done until the year 2000. That's when everybody was like, okay, red means Republican, blue means Democrat. That's what we're going to do. And I found that fascinating because I was like, wow, that was not that long ago.
That's really crazy.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, and just for reference, I've got some information here. The use of color-coded election maps began with the advent of color television, obviously. So this was from like the 1970s to 1990s. NBC News introduced the first full color electronic map in 1976 using red for Democratic candidate Jimmy Carter and blue for Republican incumbent Gerald Ford. Other networks adapted color maps but used various non-standardized color schemes. So back in this day, depending on which network you were watching, you would have to know what the colors meant, which was just kind of fun. In 2000, though, after a contested election between Gore and Bush that actually took like a few weeks to decide because there were some recounts and a Supreme Court decision and all that, they were displaying it so much that everybody realized that they had to have a solid color for each and just stick with it. And that's what they came up with. And then everybody else just kind of followed along. So that's just kind of some interesting information about red and blue. Now, one of the reasons why I did say that is because in a few minutes, I found a really cool site in, what's the site called? I think it's called USAelectionatlas.org, and they've got all the elections on there, and they have some very fine, detailed information. But the guy who started this site started way before 2000. And so all of his stuff is actually opposite. Blue's going to represent Republican in his maps, and red is going to represent Democrats. So I want to get that out of the way. I'll remind people as we go along, just so people aren't like, what the hell's going on with this map? But I read an article where the person that created this site, which is a great site, by the way, said that he started this before there was the uniform decision to do those colors, and that it would be an exhausted effort to have to go back and change all of that. So he just keeps sticking with the same. And I'm actually kind of glad that he didn't just switch over, like, because all of a sudden you're going to be looking at like elections up to a certain year, and then the next year he would switch to the right colors, and then people be like, wait, I don't know what's going on. But so just kind of some interesting facts. That's why I wanted you to know is that, yeah, it didn't start until 2000 when we started going red for Republican, blue for Democrat. But I want to talk about, first of all, what we're going to get into is actually the results, and we're going to look at state results. We're going to look at, margins and things like that. And so if you had to guess, and I'm talking about a margin percentage, not a vote margin, but if you had to guess, could you guess which state Trump won with the biggest margin by. So this is percentage. Don't think votes, think percentage. And I'm going to tell
In
you right now, think small, like not just think small populated states, because that's, small populated red states. So I guess I'm actually giving you a,
Yeah, you're giving me a big
a
hint
big
because
hint.
I would have just not thinking too deeply about it. I would have just said like, I don't know, I'll just go with Texas or
Right.
or yeah,
Which if we
probably
were
just
talking
Texas.
about vote margin, you would be correct. But percentage
I'm
wise,
going no small. Think small population,
yeah,
not
not necessarily
small.
small state, just small population.
Okay, well then I'm gonna go Alaska as my next guess.
Okay, you're close. This actually kind of goes back. We did that population quiz a few weeks ago, and you had to guess what was the least populated state. And I don't remember if you got it right or not, but the least populated state, do you remember what it is?
Was it like a Rhode Island or something like that?
No, it was a big
No,
state out west,
big state, least
not
populated. Oh,
Alaska.
um,
I'm going to give you a huge hint.
Montana.
It's the last state alphabetically.
This is so bad.
Well, there are no
Last state
Y's or
alphabet.
Z's, so just start with your W
Yeah,
states.
Wyoming.
There you
Okay,
go. There
Wyoming.
you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so in Wyoming, Trump had the biggest margin of victory, which was 45.76%. So Trump won. There was 269,000 total votes cast in Wyoming. Trump won 192,633 of those votes. Harris was 69,527. Now, I'm not going to make you guess Harris's biggest thing. I mean, it's a little different. It's actually hard to even. It's another smaller populated state, but she actually got the biggest margin in D.C., but D.C. is not a state, but it does have 3 electoral votes. And she won that margin by 83%, which is insane to me. But and in DC, by the way, they have 325,868 total votes. So they had nearly 60,000 more votes in DC than they did in the entire state of Wyoming. And when we look at voter turnout, that's even going to be in a more an amazing number, because I think Wyoming had one of the highest voter turnouts as well. Okay, so as statewide, had Vermont was the state she won the biggest by, which was 30.51%. Her 236,000 votes to Trump 119,000 votes. Largest vote margin, you've kind of already guessed. Trump's largest vote margin was in Texas, where he had 1.5 million more votes than Harris did. He won that state by 13.68 percentage points. Harris, her largest vote margin was California, which is probably also pretty guessable. 3,194,482 more votes than Trump, with a 20.13% margin. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at some information, and you can see this correctly.
Yep.
All
Yeah, I
right.
see it.
So I want to remind everybody again that blue in this scenario means Republican and red in this scenario means Democrat. These are the numbers for the 2024 presidential election. And as we see there, we've got some total votes. We've got Donald Trump winning 77,304,188 votes, getting 49.87 or 49.8 percent of the vote. And then, of course, Kamala Harris with 75,019,578 with 48.32% of the votes. Did you hear about? Did you know of these other candidates? I'm sure you knew RFK Jr. was kind of running, but did you ever hear of Chase R. Oliver?
No.
Jill Stein, I think she's done it like the last 3 years for the Green Party, and she was third. But look at that. She got 863,000 votes. Good for her. This is the one I'm interested in, is the 650,588 other votes. I don't know. Do you think those were just all write-ins, or I mean, that
Well,
must have
I don't
been.
know. Some states list like I don't know if it's a federally like standardized the exact list of candidates, or some states will have somebody listed beyond what like another state might have. So I
I
would
don't
be
know.
curious to know that.
I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, we
probably
know how
write-ins.
it's done in Michigan, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, all states usually have their own. They're kind of independent with the way they do things from the federal government. So it is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Um, That's what I was wondering. I was like, is it really, did 650,000 people really write in a candidate? And then I also thought how interesting it would be if there were just two candidates. Well, let's say, I guess, five or six candidates, because you've got the Republican Party here, the Democratic Party, the Green Party, the Independents, and then the Libertarian. Um, if like there was just such shitty candidates that one day everybody just wrote it, like somehow there was like some kind of online campaign to write in one name, whoever it was, and all of a sudden Bill Cosby is the next president, you know. And then you really got to
Yeah.
watch anytime you're at a party with drinks, you got to watch yourself because Bill Cosby's president. Yeah, it's really kind of interesting. All right, so let's go down to the map and kind of go over what I just kind of said. We're going to go up to Wyoming, and there is the margin there. We have the 269,048 votes, and then the margin, which you can get from subtracting Harris votes from Trump votes, is 123,106, and there you've got the 71.6% for Trump. And the only 25.84% for Harris. Wyoming, of course, is quite a high Republican state. And then we go over to DC here, where Harris got 90.28% of the vote, 294,000 to 21,000. And you've got the total votes of 325,000, a 273,000 difference in those votes, which is just kind of insane to me. We go up to Vermont, and that was her state with the highest vote total, or the highest margin. And then, of course, we go to the big states for the largest vote margin. 11,388,674, 300, sorry, 11,000, 11,388,674 people voted in Texas. We're going to look at those numbers later because I think we've discussed this before, that Texas is one of those states that's usually near the bottom as far as voter turnout. But there's a couple of other states on there when I was looking at the voter turnout that might surprise you, because they surprised me. So that's Texas. Go over to California, and we see a lot of people voting in California. 9 million, a little over 9 million for Harris, a little over 6 million for Trump, and that's how you get the difference there. So we can go really quick and just go to a state table here, and this will kind of help us with the margins. So we can kind of look at those again, and as we see, here are the margins, as I've said before. And this is just by largest margin. The red will be, of course, once again, Democrat. The blue will be Republican. So Trump won a lot of these states that are smaller in population. Oklahoma's got over 1 million, but Wyoming, West Virginia, Idaho, North Dakota, Oklahoma, and then you get down past, then you got Arkansas, Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee. He won a lot of those by a significant margin. And Harris would win a lot of the more populated, some of the more populated states by a bigger margin. But it's also kind of cool to like go and look at some of the states that are close, and people are going to get a good idea real quick about the states that are close, because as you can see, if we start right here with Arizona, and then we look over here, look at these states: Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Now, besides New Mexico as well, or I'm sorry, not New Mexico, I think it would be Nevada actually that would be on that list. Those were, if you remember, those were the kind of the swing states that have been going back and forth from 2016. Um, all of the five states that I mentioned, including, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, well, there's Nevada, and Nevada, six states, all went to Trump in 2016. Nevada may not have. I might be wrong on that. Let me rephrase that just so I get this right. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia and Arizona are the five I want to pay attention to. In 2016, they all went for Trump. In 2020, they all went for Biden. And then in 2024, they all went for Trump. So, very interesting enough. These are the five main swing states, and I think they're going to continue to be that way for a while. We're going to look at vote margins and things like that. But just for people's reference, look at those last four and how close they were on the differences in margins. You look at Georgia 50.72. Sorry, here's the difference right here. So Georgia was 2.19% more voted for Trump in this election. Pennsylvania 1.71% more, Michigan 1.41%, and Wisconsin. I mean, they were under a percent. And we can kind of look at that, and the numbers are right here. So Trump got 1,000 votes, where Kamala got 1,668,000. So these numbers were really close, and we're going to go over a little bit later, and we're going to see about the voter turnout. In fact, we might just do that now. Now, as we kind of look at these, is there any specific state that you wanted to look at, or was there any kind of stat you wanted to know, or are you just kind of interested in the overall stuff?
Well, I'm interested in is the last column the difference in votes that it took? Because you have the percentages, but I think it's also interesting to look at the actual. Oh no, that's other.
Yeah. So, you would have to do the math because here are the votes. So you'd have to do the math and the difference here.
I see, because there's some smaller states that even with a slightly larger margin, the vote difference might have only been like 5,000 votes or something. So
Yeah,
I
and
was
I can
interested
do
in.
error. Is there any specific states that you're thinking of? Because we can look at states just singly, like singular too. We can just see them.
Well, can we go to the last states on the margin list that you had showed? Michigan, Wisconsin, and I forgot the other ones that were the Pennsylvania,
Georgia,
Georgia.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then Arizona. Those were the five main
Yeah. So
ones.
I would expect New Hampshire to be one of the states that probably had the smallest actual vote differences.
I got you. So you want to look at the
Bis,
vote
bis,
totals for New Hampshire. And
yeah.
let's do this really quick. To make this easier, let me just go in here. There we go. All
So
right.
I do find it interesting when elections come down to only like a handful of people.
Yeah, so you have a vote difference here of what, about 18 and 5. So you've got about right around 23,000 vote difference in New Hampshire. And obviously, but only
And then
but a
23,
2.78% margin.
yeah, 23,000 vote difference. And then what was the smallest state? Wisconsin. Can you look that up?
Yes.
And I'm wondering if New Hampshire actually has a smaller.
So Wisconsin probably. Yeah, cuz this is going to be about what, 30,000 difference, little less.
Yeah. So New Hampshire probably it's very highly to be likely. I don't know if it's absolutely true, but it's very highly likely that they were the state that had the smallest difference in actual like objective votes that could have made the difference.
Yeah,
Not that
I
that
would
state
think
would have
so.
swung very much, but
No, and I think they've
um
only got
yeah.
they're probably one of the handful of states that have three, because three is the least amount you can have. You automatically get one, and then you get two for each senator you have. And since every state has two senators, you get, if you're a small
Three
state, you
minimum.
get three. So Wyoming's got three electoral votes. DC also has three electoral votes, but that's only because of their population. DC has no senators because they don't, obviously they haven't made it a state, which I'm pretty sure is part of the Democrat platform, but not the Republican platform. I don't think they want to make DC a state.
Yeah. So would it benefit Republicans to break up small rural states into separate states and get because I never knew there was a three minimum. So if you had a state that had like four electoral votes and you split it in half, now you're dealing with six electoral votes total.
Yeah, because
Is that how
every
it worked?
state would be required to have two senators, and then that counts towards everything. So I guess to kind of explain to people so they know, 435 votes in the House. We have 435 congressional districts. So another 100 senators for two senators for 50 states. So that's 535. Add the three on from Washington, D.C., because that's how many electoral votes they have. You get 538. You divide 538 by two, and you get 269. And that's why you need 270 to win, just so everybody knows, because you have to have a majority. So, yeah, it is hard to make something a state. I think you need, I think it's 2/3. I think you need 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to get a state. Just for reference, for people, 2/3 of the Senate would be it. Well, 66 would be 2/3. For the House, you'd have to do a little bit of math, but it would still be a significant thing, a significant amount. And considering how polarized everything is and how it's kind of close in the Senate, I think the Republicans have what, a 53 to 47 or a 52 to 48 majority, one of those. Um,
Yeah.
and then the House, they have a small majority. And Marjorie Taylor Greene just recently said she was resigning in January. So that's going to open up another seat. And then a lot of times when people resign, or like when Trump got into office, he took a bunch of people for his administration, and then you have to wait like months. The governor has to call for whenever the special election is going to be, and then they call for the special election, and then they vote somebody in, and then that person becomes part of the House. But all that time you're waiting, that just means there's not 435 people and they're working. That just means there's under that. And so because Trump took so many people from the House for his administration, I mean, it wasn't a crazy amount. Um, it got really close for who kind of controlled the House. I mean, it was still the Republicans, but the Democrats would only, I think at one point, were only like 3 behind. And then they won a few seats that people didn't think they were going to win, and then Republicans won a few seats. Um, so there is some things here, but we're going to get into like the voting trends and things like that, because something happens with the voting and the polls when Trump is on the ballot that never really has happened before. But when he's not on the ballot, like let's say just this past few weeks ago in the 2025, not a lot really there. But the Republicans don't do as well when he's not on the ballot. And that's why a lot of the midterms that he's faced, in fact, it's very difficult. Usually what happens is whoever is in control of the presidency, um, and I'll give you a, for example, like 2016, when Trump went in, uh, he controls the presidency. And usually that means in the midterms, what happens is usually the midterms go in favor of the opposite party. In 2018, I believe that did happen. Not as much as I think they thought it would, but it did happen. Now, there was something different, though, in 2022 after Biden was elected in 2020, because with that logic, Biden should have had a down year in 2022 for the midterms, but because women's rights and things were like that were still big of an issue for Democrats, Democrats actually had a better year in 2022. And if people remember, there was a split in the Senate. It was 50-50. And because there was a Democrat in office, the vice president automatically has the tiebreaker. So in that sense, it was kind of favored in Democrats for the past 4 years up until this past election in 2024. So that's just kind of some interesting stuff to look at. Is there any other states you were interested in, or is there any other stats here that you kind of like or you want to discuss? Or and we can also hold on. We can also do this. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of go by the map. So if you want me to hover over something, like we went to New Hampshire and
Yeah.
now we can see this
Well,
actually does give us the margin of 22,000.
I'm also interested in which state had the largest other voter
Ooh,
turnout.
the largest other voter. I actually didn't think about that, and I don't think that's going to give it to us. We'll probably have to go back to the table here, and we will go over to other 507,000. Yeah, California. So it's going to be all the big
Yeah.
states. Although
It's
Washington,
other in terms of, can you do other percentage?
yes.
Since California is such a large state that I wonder if that would skew the number.
And you want the highest, right? So
Yeah, the highest.
4.43. What is that? Utah.
Utah. Okay.
Interesting. Utah and Alaska. Interesting enough, which I would say from the recent elections, they are Republican strongholds, both of those states. Although Alaska's been kind of teetering a little bit, but Utah's definitely a Republican stronghold. Definitely
Yeah,
has,
4.43% of the voters
yeah,
voted
it
for
went
somebody
other,
other.
which was
Yeah, which is
67,000 votes. Um,
yeah,
yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's insane to me. And really quick, let's just look at the total votes again to kind of get an idea here. Obviously, this is going to be pretty much in line with the population of people, although I know Illinois and maybe Georgia. What do we have? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Yeah. Illinois and Georgia are both going to be above Michigan as far as total population, but Michigan had more votes than those two. California, 15 million. That seems right. Texas is down. I mean, that Texas's number should be closer to California's. Even New York's are down for considering like what they have. So that's just kind of interesting in itself. Um, all right, so we've got that kind of looking at how everything went. Um, and like I said, we can kind of look at this map a little bit more. Um, and the darker the color, the better that party did. So, obviously you look at these, just kind of take a look at some of these swing states where the margin was 80,000 in Michigan. The margin was 29, just over 29,000 in Wisconsin. And in Georgia, it was 115,000. In Pennsylvania, it was 120,000. In Arizona, it was 187,000. And then look at Nevada. Not less people voted than those other states, so that's why their margin's at 46,000. Um, and I don't think New Mexico usually has, yeah.
yeah.
So just
And
kind of
New
interesting.
Hampshire, New Hampshire on there.
New Hampshire,
They're just 22,000. Yeah,
yeah, and then yeah, just kind of interesting things. And also, these kind of go with Virginia and New Jersey. I want to talk about really quick because they just recently had governor's races in November, and Democrats won both those elections. Now, that was kind of expected when you look at this map because Harris did win Virginia by about a little over, well, nearly 6 percentage points, and she won New Jersey by a smaller amount, by about 5 percentage points or so, a little over five. And so, uh, but what they usually look for is in governor, as far as the governor. So this is kind of what they were polling for the governor of Virginia and the governor of New Jersey. Their polling was right around this. So they would have said, before the election on November, what was it, November 4th, there would have been polling saying the Democratic candidate would be probably around 51% and the Republican candidate would be around 46 or 47%. And then, kind of the same thing in New Jersey where it'd be around 52% for the Democrat and 46, 47% for the Republican. But those numbers actually ended up being way more. So that's kind of another thing that they look at is just kind of that's what we're going to talk about. It's the Trump effect. There is some kind of effect that happens when Trump is on the ticket. Obviously, he's not on the ticket this year. Technically, if we're talking about the Constitution, he won't ever be on the ticket again. But we don't know. I mean, he could definitely run for Senate.
yeah,
He could be on the House. He could do other things, if he wanted to. Um, and I think he's a guy that has a tremendous power within his range. So certainly he could do that thing. He might even be able to run as a vice president if I'm correct. I'm not even sure. I don't. He might be able to run as a vice president, but if anything happened to the president, I don't think he could be elevated. It would skip him because of the constitutional amendment. But okay. So that's just a little bit about that. Is there anything else before I get into? I think what I'm going to get into next is the turnout. So, do you want to see anything else before I talk about the voter turnout?
no, let's move on to turnout. I want to see what you got.
All right, so we're going to look at the turnout state level. And this right here is going to let us know the big percentages. As I said before, um, in Florida and North Dakota, I haven't found out. They're not on this list, but I think that's because they don't have a number of total registered voters. Obviously, they had people vote. They just don't have the number, and that's why they're not showing up. Um, so Wyoming had the highest turnout. And look at Wisconsin, 88.1. Wisconsin had the lowest margin percentage, anyways, not votes. And they had a high turnout. Minnesota, New Hampshire, Washington, Idaho. But then if we were to flip this, oh, that's alphabetical. Let me do that again. Then you see some of the states with the lower turnout. Alaska, which I don't know. It's really cold out there. I can kind of imagine why there's probably not a lot of people voting in Alaska. Um, Kentucky, Alabama, Hawaii, Nevada, Indiana. I mean, these three didn't even get past 60%. And these are all, we would consider Republican strongholds. So Trump still won, the popular vote by what, like 2 million or 1.5 million or something like that, without getting a lot of these votes from, you know, missing out on over 40% of the vote in Kentucky and Alabama. Hawaii, that went to Harris, but she still missed out on some. Nevada, only 60.4%. Indiana, I'm not even sure why Indiana. Midwest is usually pretty good for voter turnout. I don't know why Indiana's on this list. But then you see New York and Texas, and they're two of the biggest, most populated states, and that turnout just seems like it should be much bigger for those guys. And so it's just kind of interesting, to see this, because you wonder like what the reason for. We live in Michigan. We had a 66.9% turnout. Wonderful right there. That's a nice number, 6.9.
There you go.
But yeah, you do kind of wonder like what the difference is. What is the difference in Wyoming per se? Like, what do you think is the difference in Wyoming where 90.6% of the people voted? Let's skip Alaska because that seems too easy. But what's the difference between Wyoming and Kentucky where you have a 32% difference of the amount of people that voted? Do you have like do you have any thoughts on like why there might be that big of a
Well,
difference
there
there?
must be some sort of motivating factor. Um, they might have. I don't know what the exact system is that registers voters. Wyoming might be better at being more accurate. I know that I've been registered to vote before and have moved states and have been a little bit relaxed on getting that information updated. So I'm sure I don't know. Wyoming just might be a state where there's a multitude of like variables that kind of line up just perfectly, where you have the people that actually vote are actually in the state at the time that it's time to vote,
Right.
while at the same time, this you said Wyoming had the highest percentage for Trump. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And so there might have been, also combined with that, other motivating factors for the vote for the majority of the voting populace who did want Trump. And so
I wonder if
beyond
there's just
that,
not enough people. I wonder if, sorry, all I wanted to say was I wonder if like this is kind of representative of like people leaving the state. And in Wyoming, there's just not really, everybody just stays in Wyoming. And so,
that was one of that's one of those points. Is I wonder if that was a factor. It's just one of those states.
but then there's Wisconsin. Okay. Like you could see where you only have 296,960 registered voters in Wyoming. So you could see where, that would be easier to maintain a higher register, like a higher voter percentage of people that were voting. But Wisconsin, but then you have some of these bigger states that are up in the 80s especially Wisconsin and Minnesota, which are right next to each other. And you're seeing some interesting things there where, especially Wisconsin to me, that's kind of and the crazy thing about Wisconsin, I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but Wisconsin has the most drunk people per capita. So they also have like, out of like, I think there was like something where they were talking about like the 100 drunkest counties in the country or something like that. And Wisconsin had like 8 or 9 of the top 10. And
Maybe
so
the voting centers in Wisconsin had an open bar or something
maybe,
that brought
I
people.
don't know if
Yeah.
that would be, I don't know if that'd be the best thing. I feel like that would be illegal, but who knows? I don't know what but it is interesting just to kind of see those things. And it's like, okay, so maybe there's just people that do think like they don't want to, like in Wisconsin, Minnesota, it's early November. Granted, there are like, mail-in votes now too, which I feel like should up the percentages, right? Like if you're making it easier to vote for people, it should up the percentages as far as like who's going to be higher up there on the percentage of the people voting. But I guess in Wisconsin it's early November and you're like, ah, fuck it. What am I going to do? What am I going to go to the Mall of America for like the umpteenth time, or in Minneapolis, or if I'm in Wisconsin, I'm probably like a Green Bay Packers fan or something, and I'm like, I don't know, all I care about is football and cheese. Might as well go vote.
Yeah. I did want to say that, I mean, since Wisconsin was a swing state, I would imagine that people in swing states become more motivated to also get out and vote. But that doesn't necessarily hold true across the board, because I can see that states like Michigan are pretty far down this list in terms of the
Yeah, in
voter
fact,
turnout.
what we can see right there, I believe, oh, Pennsylvania's on there too. So Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are the only swing states on here on the top of our board. And by the way, I love swing states because you can take your significant other there and then you can sleep with somebody else, and it's fun, and then you can leave. And nobody tells anybody, I think.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
too.
that's how it works. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so yeah, it is interesting because a lot of these other swing states, we have Wisconsin, we have Pennsylvania, and let me see what happens when I click on this. Okay, so this is the cool part. I forgot about this part. So we can actually look at you know, just how things. I was hoping that when I hovered over it, it would tell me the numbers, but it's not. So it's not as cool as I thought it was. But at least you can tell. Obviously, the blue in this case, once again, if I have to remind people, is Republican, and the red is Democrat. Um, and this kind of flows. If people haven't figured this out yet, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not a well-known secret, but most highly populated city areas vote Democrat, and then the rural areas vote for the Republican. That's not always the case, but it's usually the case. And since we both live in Michigan, I did want to look at ours really quick before we go any further, because there's some interesting things in Michigan going on. And you kind of see this in Michigan, except there are outliers. Marquette County is the most populated county in the UP. It's actually the most populated, and Marquette is the most populated city um, from, I think, north of Mount Pleasant. Um, we are from Traverse City, but Marquette actually has more people than Traverse City. But our county that we're from, Grand Traverse County, has more people than Marquette County. And then obviously you've got this big old red chunk here is Kent County, where Grand Rapids is, and then obviously you've got Macomb and Oakland, and actually I don't know if Macomb went for Harris. I think Macomb's over here. Macomb and Oakland and Wayne counties. And so you can kind of see, but then you have this, you can kind of see where those obviously went for like Democrat, and then the rural areas went for Republican. But then you have this Leelanau County, where it's been shifting in the last 15 years. Actually, ever since Trump's been on the ballot, apparently the people of Leelanau County have rejected Trump, and they have voted more Democratic. And you're gonna find weird trends with a lot of things that happen. I did want to say this. It's not going to be on here because I can't actually show you the results county wise, but I did read. We're from Grand Traverse County. You grew up in Benzie County. Grand Traverse County and Benzie County were the only two counties in 2024 in Michigan that had more Democratic votes than they did in 2020. Just kind of an interesting thought
That's
there.
interesting.
Yeah.
And a little insider baseball. I grew up going to school in Benzie County, but technically the house was on the edge of Grand Traverse County.
Well, you were like
I
right on the
still,
line.
literally, well, I don't think it matters with like doxing, but not like a million people watching, but
Yeah.
literally county line road, right? So it's like you live on one side of the road, you're in one county, you live on the other side, you're in
And
a different county.
I'm gonna say that across the country in rural areas that are by counties, there's probably a lot of county line roads. Even though we're specifically talking about the county
Yeah.
now, I just want to say there probably is a lot of county line roads out there. Because
That's
they
right,
just
yeah.
don't. I like the numbered roads. Like I'm sure you've seen them, and then sometimes they'll be like 2.5 road, and you're just like, what? Who named this? Like, why are you doing this? It's just kind of funny. Um, but okay, so that's just kind of some interesting stuff. And that kind of lets people know that the big cities, that's kind of, you look at California, it's the same way. Um, Look at that coast. That entire coast went Democratic, and then you kind of get in more inland and it goes Republican. Um, and then, but there are going to be some things that are like Texas. I don't think all of Texas is there. Well, maybe they did. So obviously you've got, well, actually, this is Dallas and Fort Worth, right? I mean, they're both side by side. Um, and is this Fort Worth County or is this Fort Worth County? Which one's to the right and which one's to the left? I always forget which. Do you know?
I won't be helpful
Okay.
for this. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm not
sorry.
sure what
Okay,
the
yeah, it's kind of
orientation is.
hard. It is kind of hard when you don't have like the cities labeled. I want to say this is Dallas and Fort Worth is to the west. Um, but then you've got San Antonio and Austin down here, Houston over here. So you can see the bigger cities, El Paso. One of these is El Paso. I think it's this one. I don't know. But Texas has the most counties too, out of every. As you can see, there's a ton here. This just looks like a Tetris board, right? Like somebody played Tetris and won. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge, and so a lot of the more rural voters, hard word to
You'll
say.
have Dallas to the right of Fort Worth. So
So was I
if
right?
that's
Yeah, I was right then, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, Dallas would be Democratic, and Fort Worth would actually be more Republican. Um, just kind of an interesting feature because they are what, like, I mean, they're basically sister cities, right? Like you can pretty much intertwine in between them and you can go, back and forth, and they're kind of, it's kind of like Minneapolis, St. Paul, or, other places where they're just kind of all one city, even though they call them two cities. Um, yeah, so there's that. Back to the voter turnout thing really quick. I just wanted to take a look at where all the swing states were with so we had, Wisconsin at 88%. We have Pennsylvania at 76.7%. The next swing state that shows up there is Georgia at 72.7%. And then we have, takes a little bit here, Michigan and Arizona, 66.9 and 66.8. So it is interesting enough. They are still kind of high up there for the most part. It looks like Michigan, Arizona, that's probably about the average. What is the average? I don't know if we can get an average, but yeah, just kind of an interesting thing about the turnout. It really interests me to see these numbers. I think Wyoming's always kind of been up there, but as we just talked about it's kind of fun to just see why this is, why some people turn out more than other in different states. Um, why people seem to care more in other states. I don't know, but like you said, swing states you would think would be up there. Like that would make more sense to me. But you have any commentary you'd like to add about any of this?
I do think it's interesting that everybody knows this, that the population, because you still look at a state and it looks um mostly Republican, right? But these very densely populated areas are the ones that typically would go Democrat, except for some areas that you pointed out where it's like sometimes you'll just have a certain population of people that decide that they don't like that candidate and they vote differently. And I do think that we take that for granted, that that is how it is. But I think that in a vacuum, if I were to forget everything I knew about voting and the way people would vote, that I wouldn't make the base assumption that populated areas would vote Democrat. Like I think that in 2020 hindsight, it seems like it's really obvious, but I would just assume that there'd be Trump voter, or not Trump, but I'll just say Republican voters that would be grouped together into cities as well. And I guess, I mean, when you trace it down and you break it apart, you can think of all the reasons why that's not the way it is. But I just want to point out that it doesn't have to be obvious. Like it is an interesting thing, and we just rely upon it. And it's like everybody knows it as if they just always knew it was true. But I don't think it's necessarily as obvious as it seems to be.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I don't know if you can get the numbers because I've got so many tabs up here. It'd be easier for you to get the numbers. But Grand Traverse County, the county that we basically are both from, um, was really close. I think it was only separated by like maybe 1,000 votes or something. And so I think it's very important, like you said, it's very important for people to realize because I can't stand when people like bring up maps and they're like, this is why this person won. And then they show like a big giant swath of color. And it's like, well, yeah, but you have to realize that in a big city, there are going to be a number of Republican voters. There's definitely going to be a number of Republican voters. It's not like the Democrats are going 100% to nothing. It's usually like maybe 60-40, or maybe it's even closer like than that. And then in the rural areas, you have the same thing. It's not like the Republicans are, in Omaha, like, well, probably not really Omaha, but like some prairie town place in Nebraska or Oklahoma, it's going to be 100% Republican. There's always a variation of voters. So people have to realize that when they see a county a certain color, it doesn't mean that that party won it out like 100% outright. Like that just doesn't happen. I don't think any county's ever been like that. Well, maybe that small county in Hawaii that has 86 people. I don't know how they voted. They might have been outright. But for the most part, you're not going to get that. Even in Loving County, Texas, which is one of the smaller counties. I think they only have like 169 people. I guarantee you there was a few people there that had to have voted Democrat. It's not going to just all be Republican. So people should know that. I just want to make sure they understand that just because it's a certain color doesn't mean that that's dominant. That's who's dominating that area. But do you have any numbers for me?
I don't right now, but I am interested in the relationship between, because what we're looking at is the voter turnout in terms of the number of total people that are registered to vote,
Mm-hmm.
and then the percentage of those registered voters that who actually voted.
Right.
But I do wonder if how that correlates to the number of people who are eligible to vote, but aren't registered to vote. Like people who are voting age, but for some reason aren't part of the registration system. That's
Yeah.
optional, right? Like you don't have to register to vote, but so you might not be
No,
on that list.
so normally I think yeah, I think that I don't remember the numbers, and unfortunately, I don't think I have a table to represent this right now off my fingertips. But it's probably around 70% of the people in the entire population of this country that is registered to vote, or maybe it might be a little under, maybe 68 or something like that. And that is a number you could get pretty quickly, I think, for the most part, because as you can see on this chart, Florida and North Dakota don't even know. Like they either just didn't provide the information, or I'm not sure. But states have been making it a lot easier. In 2018, in our state of Michigan, they did pass a law to where you could, every time you went and renewed your driver's license or anything, you could register to vote right then and there. So that actually made it a lot easier for people turning 18, especially if they had to renew their driver's. I don't know, maybe you do have to renew it even when you turn 18. I'm not even sure. But I don't know if it's just the every 4 years, or if no matter what, you have to renew it when you're 18 because it's like a different license. Don't they have the vertical ones in Michigan for like when you're under a certain age?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if they still have that. That's what I had when you're under 21, I believe. And
Okay.
it's just a really quick and easy way to
Right. To
glance
let
at
them
someone's
know.
license and see if they're, yeah, because drinking is such an important distinction, right? But whether you're under,
Right, right. Which is another fucking crazy thing because you have to be 21 to drink, you have to be 21 to buy alcohol, you now have to be 21 to buy tobacco, but you can be 18 to smoke tobacco. So that's always fucked up in my head when they do that kind of shit. But just let me know if, I don't know if you're looking up any numbers. Let me
yeah,
know if
I'm
you've got any.
lurking and looking, and
Figured.
I'm seeing some information like this is from Ballotpedia. And because initially they want to show me voter turnout by like total eligible voters and not necessarily by the registered voting base. And so you do see some differences. And I'm seeing like 2024 turnout that the highest, which is it's listed as 76.4%, is Wisconsin. So it starts with Wisconsin, Michigan 74%, and then Pennsylvania is 3. So in these battleground states, the first 3, you are seeing a the three highest percentages in terms of like the total eligible population. So there is an, like I said, an interesting difference between the people who are registered to vote. And it's like, why doesn't somebody take the extra step to be registered in the first place? Wyoming must have some sort of system set up where the people, maybe it's hard to register in Wyoming. Maybe it's a little bit harder. And so like, if you're going to do it, you're probably going to vote. I know in Michigan, it seems to be dead simple. It's just like, I'm checking a box when I'm like renewing my license or something,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
at least from what I can remember. But it just felt like I was checking a box. Like, yeah, I guess I'll register. So I would be interested to know if there's states where that process has a little bit more red tape in the process, and maybe that's where you get these differences. But
There probably is. I mean, there's definitely a correlation with, especially these last few years where it's kind of been more the Democratic states that make it easier to vote. And then the Republican states, I don't think are necessarily making it harder to vote. They just want to make sure that they've got all the right voter rolls and that the right people are voting, which I do understand. But I do want to kind of go over this narrative really quick that federally in presidential elections that illegal immigrants vote. That is, I mean, it's basically false. I mean, there might be something that sneaks or squeaks through every now and then, but there's no way for an illegal immigrant to vote because they do not have an SSN. And you need your social security number when you register to vote. You don't need your social security number to vote, but you do need it to register to vote. So it's kind of important for people to realize that that's really not happening. Um, Now, on state elections and things like that, there are different states have different rules. California allows certain things to happen. And then there are naturalized citizens and people who have gone the 20 years or however long it fucking takes to become a citizen, and they go through that process, and then they are eligible to vote because then they become citizens, they get an SSN, and it's all good. And that's fine. I mean, I think that's fine with me. I mean, they're working, they're making their way in their community and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that people realized. I don't want to get into too many conspiracy theories, but just realize that that's nearly impossible for them to do because kind of like the same thing where they say they're getting all the health care. And it's like, well, they can't. They pay in taxes, but they can't even get them back. Illegal immigrants will pay in billions and billions of dollars of taxes, but because they're legal immigrants and they're using a different number, not an SSN, but their own like individual
yeah,
number, kind of like how a business would to pay in their taxes. They pay in taxes and they pay in the fucking social security. And most of these guys will
yeah,
never ever get social security because they'll never be naturalized. So just kind of an interesting
yeah.
fact out there for people who are all hoorah for
And
getting
then
rid of every immigrant.
yeah, and I've heard multiple, like especially like with the healthcare thing, right? There's, because I've heard multiple counters, because I know it's like the one where it says, well, there's one where it's like anybody can walk into the emergency room and get service and get help, right? And so it's like, are you classifying that as free healthcare? And maybe some people do. And then but then there's also a great point. I think I heard you make this point where it's like, well, but when you get to the morality of it, it's like, are you expecting the emergency room to, is that not a good thing or not? And I think most people would agree that the emergency room should be available for people who have medical emergencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can really drill it down
If
into the
you
weeds on
if
it,
you
but
vacation in a different country and you get hurt, do you not want them to help you? I mean, like that's kind of the ultimate question. I do hate that, and I agree with you. I hate that mentality. For one thing, it's just cruel. It's like, okay, so you don't care if they live or die, which is where I don't want to get on a whole pro life kick here. But usually when somebody tells me they're pro life, they literally just mean pro birth. They don't mean anything else. They mean, no, I still want death penalty. I still, I'm okay with, all these other ways that are people dying. I just want people to make sure that they're having their babies.
so what you're saying is we need more afterbirth
Yeah, definitely more
attention.
afterbirth. Fun fact, I have I don't know how anybody can say afterbirth and then say fun fact and how it's really going to be a fun fact. But I have a godchild, and she was born in June of 2011. And I was up at the hospital, not right when she was born, but right after she was born. and her father had sent me a message, like right after she was born, and he said, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm always hungry." And then he gives me a picture of the afterbirth, and it actually looked like spaghetti. So I wasn't really that like I was like, "Oh, this actually doesn't look that bad. Can you fry it up?" And he didn't. He did not fry it up. But so just kind of a fun fact that that this dude sent me a picture of his. I guess it'd be his wife's afterbirth, right? Not really his child's afterbirth. It'd be his wife's afterbirth. I think. I don't know whose afterbirth is it? That
Maybe his.
that is a Dr. Phil question. When we have Dr. Phil on, we'll ask him that question. All right.
All right, moving on.
Yeah. Any
Yeah.
other questions about the vote margin?
No, I have no
All
more. We
right.
can move
So
on.
I before we get into, we're going to get into a new segment here in a minute. But before we do that, I want to look at the demographic of voters and kind of compare some things. Okay, so we're going to look at some voting patterns. Okay, and how things went. And really quick, this is kind of a good graphic here. What we're going to see is the difference between 2016, 2020, and 2024. And this is kind of a cool chart. And this is just Donald Trump. So, what we have here in 2016, you can see some numbers here. 52% of men voted for Trump, 41% only voted for Clinton, whereas, as usual, 54% of women voted for Clinton and 39 for Trump. And then you see the margins really tighten up in 2020, where 48% of the men voted for Biden and 50% voted for Trump. And then there was actually more women going towards Trump in 2020, even though I think really in all it was just a lot more votes. I think um, percentage wise, 2020 was was the highest turnout in any election ever,
Hmm.
percentage wise, not vote wise. Sorry, I said that backwards. Vote wise, not percentage wise, is what I meant to say. So, vote wise, we had the most votes ever in 2020. I think in 2024 they were pretty close though. And then you can see in 2024 where men sharply went up for Trump, even more so than they did in 2016, 55 to 43, and then even some women went up. And then you kind of get into this other thing, just the white race, the great white race. We'll
Yep.
talk about them for a second. No, we're not great at all. In 2016, Trump had 54% of those votes. In 2020, he had 55 and 55. So that kind of stays on par. In fact, Hillary Clinton had the worst out of out of between Biden, Clinton, and Harris. And then you look at the black non-Hispanic vote. That was huge. And Trump definitely cut into that. You see in 2016, 91 to 6, 2020, 92 to 8. But then you see here in 2024 where it went from 83 to 15. So there was a definite cut into that. And this is how Trump won the 2024 election is when you look at these three boxes. You look at black, non-Hispanic, then you look at Hispanic, and you look at Asian. All of these numbers are better for Trump that they don't have the numbers here for 2016 for Asian, but you can see these numbers. The Hispanic numbers, 66 to 28 from Clinton had 38-point advantage in that in 2016. Biden had a 25-point advantage against with Hispanics in 2020. But then look at that; it goes all the way down to 3. So Trump really brought up. These are the three main things. He brought up the black vote, the Hispanic vote, and the Asian vote quite significantly in 2024. And that's basically how he won, was through the kind of the minority voting. And then if you want to even look at some numbers further, you look at white men and white women. You have women here. That was kind of steady. The men was steady, even though the men did not really go for Hillary Clinton. Um, And there was something that I saw Michelle Obama say a few days ago, and she said that we are not ready for a woman president. She said that she thinks there's some misogyny within the voting base, which I'm sure there is. I just don't know how much there is. Um, So it is kind of interesting that she said that. And when you look at these numbers, maybe in 2016, I really just think Hillary Clinton wasn't the best candidate. This right here, and we can talk about it all you want, is kind of a response for Clinton kind of fucking over Bernie Sanders. Because I think that in 2016, and this might be controversial, but I really do think that if Bernie Sanders would have took the nominee in 2016, I think he would have won in
Hmm.
2016. And I
I
don't
agree with you.
know if we would have ever had any Trump presidencies after that. I'm not sure. COVID did do some fucked up shit, so who knows? But yeah, I mean, do you have some things
Yeah.
you want to say? I feel like I'm talking
Well,
a lot here.
I agree. I agree with that. Well, no, you got all the facts here, but I agree with your assessment of Bernie Sanders that I think he would have taken it all. He would have gone all the way. I think that he swayed a lot more of the moderate vote, and I think for whatever reason Trump um gets a lot of that from some of these people,
Yeah.
especially like Harris. I feel like a lot of the moderate vote went to Trump. The Yeah, I just yeah, what happened to Bernie was really crazy, and I hope that Democrats kind of can look at that at some point as a case study on like what on how things work. Because well, now why didn't he get through? Do you know that there's like different theories
Super
on? Do you think
delegates.
he didn't?
Yeah, and I think that the
Explain
Democratic
that a little
Party
bit.
got rid of super delegates. But basically, what happened is Bernie was up in the beginning, and then and I don't even know how they work, but the Democrats had something at that time called super delegates too, and apparently a bunch of the super delegates, nearly all of them, pledged to Hillary Clinton. And so this is probably where money gets involved. And Citizens United, which was a Supreme Court case, it was passed what, 2010 or 2012, was which basically said that anybody can spend as much fucking money as they want on a campaign, which I actually hate. If people ever looked up campaigns, and it's probably like this in Canada too, but I know for sure in the United Kingdom, when they have campaigns there, first of all, I think they're like 6 to 8 weeks long. That's it. You get 8 weeks to figure out who you want as your prime minister. Um, they are not allowed to have ads on TV. That's illegal. And they're only allowed to take like, I don't even know if they're allowed to take any money. I think they're supposed to spend their own money. But when you don't have ad buys and all this other thing, like they can do that kind of thing. We're just kind of like that weird country that says, okay, we're just going to go all in. And I mean, there are other countries that bet on the presidential election in the US, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. So it is interesting. But yeah, the money was probably the biggest thing. The superdelegates pledged to Hillary Clinton, and then she won the nominee. And I think that pissed a lot of people off. And we had talked about this before, where there was a coalition of people who were all for what Bernie was saying. They were for uh, probably his biggest thing was free college, right? Like free college for everybody. And then he did have a democratic socialist view. That's what his view was. The crazy thing is that now we're here 9 years later since then, since 2016, and um, Mamdani, Zohran Mamdani, just got elected quite significantly, one of the first mayors to get over 1 million votes in New York City in like 30 or 40 years, and that's what he is a democratic socialist. So Bernie, it's almost like he came in too early, even though he's I think just as old. I think he's actually older than Trump. I think he's in his early to mid 80s. But I think he may have just come on a tad bit too early, because what you're seeing now is more people embracing and understanding that. I think a lot of people realize that democratic socialism isn't Mussolini socialism from the 30s and the 40s, or Chinese socialism like it is now. It's its own thing. And I think they're starting to realize that it's not as bad as people play it out to be. And so I think that you're definitely going to get you're probably going to get more of those types of candidates. AOC is another person that's like that. And Bernie, I don't know how long he's going to be around. I mean, like I said, he's had some medical issues and stuff, but it is just kind of interesting to see that he really did get screwed out in 2016. And it's unfortunate because I think it would have been a different scenario for Democrats. But there is some kind of Trump effect that happens where he does get more votes on, or every Republican gets more votes on the years that he's on a ballot. And that would have been 2016, 2020, and 2024. So just kind of going through the rest here, we have the rest of these stats are just between 2020 and 2024. Black men 87 to 12 in so a 75 points um, advantage for Biden. That went down to 54 in 2024 for when it was Trump and Harris. Same with black women, 95 to 5. I mean, that's huge from Biden in 2020. And then in 2024, that went down from 90 points advantage to a 79 point advantage. And then look what happened with Hispanic men. 57, 18 percentage points that Biden led. And Trump takes this by 2 points. He flipped this by 20 points, which is insane. And then Hispanic women did well with them too. He flipped this pretty big. I mean, there was a 32-point advantage there for Biden. It dropped to only a 6-point advantage for Harris in 2024. So it's just kind of interesting to see those numbers. Here's kind of a breakdown really quick of the ages. And as you see here, older people tend to vote more conservative. It's kind of what it's been. So you kind of see these numbers. In 2016, people under the age of 50 were more towards the Democratic Party. In 2020, people under the age of 50 were still 38-point advantage there, 41-point advantage there. But you see how significantly this once again closed in. So you had a 38-point advantage in 2020. That went down to 21 in 2024. So he shaved 17 points off there and got these younger people to vote for him. And then, as you can see, he got way more people between 50 and 64, and then the people over 65 who usually vote Republican anyways in the same way. Anything you want to say about these trends?
Well, it is interesting. I mean, like we could touch. I don't know if you're planning on touching on, but the obvious thing with the Hispanic voter base change on the page before, and Trump's stance. I mean, one of his kind of like landmark issues was immigration, and so it makes you wonder, like how that fits into the change for that demographic that voted for him, especially Hispanic, which has been
Yeah,
like in the spotlight for immigration. I have heard before that there can be a bit of a viewpoint difference uh between people who have come here legally through the process, and how I don't want to prescribe a morality to it, like as if like you climb a ladder and then you want to shut the door behind you. So I'm not even painting it that way, but I do wonder if there is something where, like, if you do something legally, and especially how complicated I've heard it is in the US to go through the entire process. But if you are one of those people that goes through it, if you do have a sense that it's not really fair for you to have it so hard, and then for other people to come here illegally, and then also want to vote for a president that is in favor of relaxing those rules.
definitely.
But I don't. But I don't know. You know, ultimately I don't know. But I just think it's interesting, and I know it's a topic that people have talked about. But I'm wondering what your perspective on that might be.
No, I agree with you. I think that and why not? Like if you take 20 years, like you do your shit right and you become a citizen, why wouldn't you be fucking pissed off if somebody's just coming in here doing certain things or whatever? If they're not in the process of getting it, they're just here to do it. And I really mean the very illegal ones, obviously. There are definitely ones that are on like visas and they're, work visas, they're working here, or there's the ones that come in and they're just in the process of getting becoming a citizen. And those people shouldn't be bothered. I mean, if you're one of these Hispanic people who have already done that process, those people shouldn't bother you. But I definitely understand why people just coming in whether the floodgates were open or whatever you want to say, would be an issue. Now, I will say that I also think that with Hispanic people, that immigration might have been on there, and we're going to look later after our segment about why people voted for candidates. What were their issues? Whether it was immigration, and economy was the big one. Economy was actually the biggest. And I do think that a lot of them might have just swayed for that. Like, I think a lot of people were like, okay, and this is really, I think, the 2020 COVID effect. I think we had talked about this before. When something happens and then inflation happens, and really a lot of the inflation was on the businesses themselves. I mean, Biden didn't really do a lot of things, and there's not really a way that Biden could do where the whole world was experiencing inflation. It's not like he controlled the whole world, and he certainly didn't do
Yeah.
that with his mental state that a lot of people believe that he was in anyways. So um, it is interesting with the numbers and things like that. So I do think that there are a lot of people that there might have been Hispanics that are voting on the economy. But we'll get into that, and that'll be, kind of a more detailed thing. I don't know if there's anything else. Was there anything else you wanted to say? I mean, obviously, this chart here, which just represents the age of voters. I mean, this has kind of been a trend for a while now, where it's more of the usually the older people, but there are some things that are crazy, right? Just right here, where you have people between 18 and 50, where you had a 41-point advantage from Dems in 2016, 38-point advantage in 2020, and he takes 17 points off that advantage, and especially in the 30 to 49
Yeah.
range, where he's only 2
I
points.
think there was a big there was some sort of like podcast effect
Yes,
that had happened. I know that there was a recent interview that Kamala Harris was in, that she had talked about it, about why she didn't do more.
right.
That there did seem to be a sentiment within sort of like the people around her that they didn't want her to, even if she individually had thought that maybe she did want to and just talk to anybody and get her ideas out. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know like what actually was going on behind closed doors, but I think that, well, in hindsight, I can understand why they would want to not do it, because they're afraid of you going on a podcast that is right leaning, that it would end up looking bad for you because you'd get a bunch of gotcha questions. So I can understand that, but now in retrospect, it really just seems like the best case would have been for her to do the same thing and hit all these podcasts and try to probably make herself more at a baseline more personable, but at a higher level express her ideas in more of a nuanced way to an audience that maybe wasn't as exposed, or was getting her positions filtered through whatever algorithms that they had, so um
Yeah, no, I
but I
totally,
do, yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think what you had was Donald Trump doesn't seem to answer to anybody but Donald Trump, correct? And that's what I think drove a lot of people to vote for him. A lot of people liked that. And I don't want to use the word like dictator type mentality or whatever, but there is some type of authoritarian type of kind of ideology that he has, where he says, okay, it's going to be this way and I make the decisions. Whereas the Democratic Party still kind of ruled around like a class of individuals, and they were kind of, you know, telling Kamala what to do and what not to do, which probably wasn't the best idea. And that's what the Democrats had to embrace. They have to kind of find their way. The Republican Party has already made a shift. And yes, it is more towards the right, but they've already made that shift. And that was when Trump was elected in 2016. And he's kind of, and then winning in 2024 kind of reminded everybody that MAGA or Trumpism or whatever you want to call it isn't going away. So you have to find a way to deal with that. And I think that a lot of the Democrats just thought, oh, people will get bored with this. And they didn't. And it didn't happen that way. Now, I will say that in 2020, there was a direct response to Trump's reaction to COVID, I think, and some other things that were happening. And that's why people voted for Biden. And then you have the same thing happening in 2024, where you have a direct response to inflation and things and immigration. And that's why people voted for Trump over Harris. So it constantly happens that way. We constantly have this juggernaut of a battle back and forth every 4 years, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about the pandemic too, it's, yeah, because there's unfortunate things, right? Like if we had had a pandemic mostly through the Trump era,
Yeah.
then then what would that have looked like? Because there were a lot of irritating things that we had to go through
Yeah.
that you want to blame somebody for, right? And I don't know to what extent I can blame Biden for everything, but I do know that, and also like just talking
Backlash
about
on
the
the
lockdowns,
vaccinations, though.
the
Yeah.
vaccinations and the lockdowns,
Yeah.
right? Like whether or not they were good or they were bad,
Well, the lockdowns were
we
during
can.
Trump, but yeah.
Did we not have any lockdowns after
No,
at
we
all?
just had the main lockdown. I think states did some probably lockdowns every now and then, maybe little ones, but the federal lockdown was in March and April of 2020 when Trump was president.
I see. Well, besides lockdowns, but there's like a mask on era that stretched out
That
for
is,
quite some
yeah,
time.
that is true. I
That
think a
some
lot of
people
people
that's
were, yeah,
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So my point is that, and I'm not saying, because I'm not ascribing a position to like of masks being bad, but I'm saying that I still think that there was an irritating aspect to it
yeah.
that you still wanted to point your finger at somebody, right? And so that's the unfortunate part
You
where it's like,
always do. That is the unfortunate. It doesn't matter what, like a hurricane can come in. Everybody can be completely 100% prepared for everything, and everything can be all in place, but it could kill a bunch of people and cause all this damage, and somebody's going to blame somebody. And unfortunately, that blame usually goes to the president because who else are you going to blame? Every once in a while,
yeah,
maybe like the FEMA leader or the or whatever, whoever administrator, but that's usually what happens.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and also to go with your point where you talked about Trump having this like sort of I don't know, like an authoritarian kind of air to him, right? And I think that like my perspective of Trump voters is that you're also fed a certain feed of the current administration, and when I say current, I mean the current at that time
right.
of the Biden administration as being particularly spineless, right? A sense that he wasn't running things, or that he was kind of. Now we could talk about age objectively, because like Trump is very old too, so it's like, what
Right.
does that mean? But
Right.
there was a reputation of spinelessness, and I think that maybe that that was lubrication for the authoritarian nature that Trump presented, right? Where it's like you just want something that is the antithesis of the spinelessness that you're sort of that is being projected to you from that administration. Does that make sense? That's kind of how I see
No,
part of
I
that
get it, but
playing
I
out.
also see like the other end. First of all, wonderful that you use the word lubricant. I commend you. You get 10 points for that. I'm gonna start having a scoring system for cool words that you just bring
All
up
right.
for me. But no, I get that. But I also there's things that you kind of like. The thing is we've become so polarized to the point where I feel like if one side does something and then the other side's like, oh my God, and then all of a sudden the other side will do it too. But then there people will be like, no, it'll be like the same argument, but from a different set of people. And it's just so weird to me because that is kind of cultish in my way. And I'm saying this about both sides. It's kind of cultish to just be like, oh, okay, well, now we agree this way. And I will say that I do feel like the right side is a little bit more cultish than the left side, but that's probably just me because I probably lean a little bit towards more to the left. But what I see is what I see is a bunch of people, honestly, uh, and I'm not saying Trump is because I don't really know, but I do think he's complicit, but I don't know for sure. But I see a lot of people talking about the Epstein files like now everything's fine. Like, whatever. It was just a
Yeah.
little fun on an island. And it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
so it is weird. Um, but I don't know. I don't want to get too
There
much into
is,
that, but yeah.
yeah, there is a shockingly large amount of, I think, what would you call bipartisanship to the Epstein case? Like
Yes.
most
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
most people want, like, even amongst people, like, yeah, amongst people that I know on both sides of the aisle, like, because one of the common things is like, say you have somebody who's a Democrat who's talking to a Republican, and they're saying, hey, like, you just don't want Trump to be, on the Epstein list. Like, I've actually heard most people say, well, like, actually, even if Trump's on there, I want to know, like, because like most people actually just want to know who's on there so they can be informed about it and not have it hidden. And so it is one of the rare unifiers. And you can see the biggest divide is actually sort of a classist divide and not even really
This
a
is
political
true. I
divide.
mean, there is a difference, but I do wonder. The thing is nowadays what we're in this kind of society is, even if, I mean, his name has definitely been mentioned. We all know that. And there's some things on there that are a little bit questionable. I don't want to get into some of the things, but there's some been jokes about it and all kinds of stuff. But the thing is it's like we could get into that, but I don't think it's going to change anybody's mind about having him be president. And so at what point should it change somebody's mind? Okay, so if he's complicit and just knows that that was happening, that's still bad. But okay, he didn't do anything with anybody. But if you
Yeah.
find out he did something with somebody and it was forceful, you would think that a lot of people would be like, well, wait a minute. I mean, should this guy be the president of the United States? And I'm sure the same people would say the same thing if this was 30 years ago and Bill Clinton's name was on it. And that's the other
And that's the
argument that I don't
cultish
like is,
quality.
what's that?
Yeah. That's the cultish quality you're talking
Well,
about
yeah,
here.
and the thing is like there are some things where I hear and I'll be like I'll hear on, it's mainly Facebook and Reddit and shit, and you can kind of take that shit with a grain of salt, because most people that say shit on those things will not say that shit in real life. They'll just say it on there. But there'll be people who will be like, well, Clinton's probably on it, and then I'll see people be like, yeah, okay, then he should go to jail. Like, what? I don't like, but
Yeah.
and there is a little bit of a more cultish, I believe, and maybe people don't believe this, a little bit more of a cultist ideology right now, and maybe it's just because he's president, with some of the Trumpers, and I do feel that. I've never worn hats or shirts or bought things or said, call me daddy. They literally have people out there with shirts to say, I don't care if Trump's a pedophile. I would never wear anything like that for any candidate. There's nobody that's like that high up for me. Nobody. I don't think anybody is like, why? Why does it matter? Like, who cares? Just vote for somebody and then chill for 4 years and then vote for whoever else you want to vote for if you had a good or bad 4 years. Like, that's how I feel. I don't need merchandise or
Yeah.
anything
You're
like
telling
that.
me if producer Doofer was running for president, you wouldn't wear a hat that says Doofer, what's the saying? Doofer's got the best pooper. How does it go?
I think that's it. He does. That's what
Okay,
they say.
yeah.
That's what the goats tell me in Montana. But I think that if Doofer was running, I would probably expose all his secrets because he's got a lot of them. And, we're going to have to find him soon. But anyways, we're kind of getting too far into other stuff, which is fine. Let's go ahead, and it's time for our new segment that we're going to be doing. So let me go ahead and get back to a face-to-face here. Well, there you are. All right. First of all, before we get into this new segment, Brandon, do you know what time it is?
I'm gonna guess. Do I have to lip sync
Are you
this?
ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Oh, why is it not working? Boy,
No, this is
we
awkward.
have a.
It's time.
For our fake
There we go. That was actually
Podcast.
pretty good. I didn't know it was going to play
It was
right there,
okay.
and you had it going.
I didn't. Yeah, I missed the word fake.
That's all right.
I lip
That's all right.
sync
All right.
sponsors. All right. Let's hear it.
I love this one. This one's great. I think this is going to be great for both sides of the aisle. We are fake sponsored to you by Hide Biden. Is your Biden acting strange and confused? Does he keep wandering around in wonder while you're trying to throw your key party? Well, worry no more. Hide Biden has you covered. We will personally guide your Biden away with a dangling set of keys and hide him. He'll be fed, changed, and returned when your orgy is over. Hide Biden from the company that brought you Boragor. We are also fake sponsored by the Trump Pump. Do you suffer from inadequate small hands? Are you tired of people always calling you an overweight Oompa Loompa? Would you like certain body parts to be inflated like your ego? Then you need the Trump Pump. Just place on the body part that you want bigger and pump away. The Trump Pump, made in China. All right. So that was our fake sponsors for today. Lovely fake sponsors.
Good.
Great items. Great items. Haida Biden works on that crazy uncle. Trump Pump doesn't work so well on your penis. The Trump Pump, just so people know. Not that I know. I don't know anything about it. All right. Now, we've got a new segment. And before we get to this new segment, let's just hear something here. I just want to hear something here and see.
It's discussion time. Discussion time.
All right.
Matt says something crazy. Matt says something weird. Brandon has to say things. Discussion time is here. Meow.
I feel like the meow has become a standard in the podcast.
Yeah, that's good falsetto. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
So this is discussion time. This is just where I take my 3 a.m. thoughts and I write them down so we can have some kind of conversation about them. Brandon knows nothing. I should say Brandham knows nothing about these. He's not heard them. And I felt like I had a lot of 3 a.m. thoughts a few days ago about farts. So I felt like we should talk and have a maybe like a fartsultation, and we'll talk. And I just want to give you some things that I was thinking about. So I'm going to say some crazy and weird things, and then Brandon's going to have to say things because this is how this works. So, first of all, I wanted to ask you, do you think that there are occupations where flatulence would be detrimental to your work? Like it would just be like you wouldn't be able to work because you have so much flatulence. Like I wouldn't want a gassy doctor, right? Like just sitting in a room and they're like pumping out farts.
Yeah. But you could have a gassy surgeon, right?
That wouldn't be so bad. That's actually going to be a question in a minute that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, you could have a gassy surgeon. And I think that would be like, yeah, because you're going to be out.
You don't want a gassy dentist because now your mouth's open. And
that's true. I didn't think of that one.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about like more like prestigious. Like I was thinking about like a judge. Like would people be able to take the judge seriously? Like when she's having like I say she, sorry, it could be a he too. But if they're having a ruling, and they're just constantly farting, and like how do you not? And like they're being very serious, acting like they don't hear the farts. It would just be kind of a chaotic scenario. Maybe an SNL skit, really, is what it sounds like. But
it's not going to change the verdict. I mean, I think it'd be worse to have a gassy lawyer representing me.
Yeah, like especially if he's like over talking to like the jury and he just like crop dusts them, like, and they're just like, oh God, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. Like,
Yeah. The guilty. He's guilty.
Yeah. And do you think like employees, also astronaut, like I do wonder about an astronaut, but there's also a gravity situation there that's different. So I don't know if the smell just immediately goes like up, even though heat, I think, always kind of rises. So I don't know. But would employees working for like a person like this, do you think they would take them less serious if they were farting all the time? Like, do you think they'd like, even if somebody explained, they're like, oh, I've got, IBS or whatever it is, and would they still be like, oh God, I can't? Because there's that little bit of immaturity in all of us.
Yeah, you would have to take them a little bit less seriously.
Yeah, I think that would be the case. Yeah. And here's one of my thoughts. Do you think that when people are put under for surgery, that there's been an instant where like the patient let out a loud, smelly fart, like under anesthesia?
For sure. That has to have happened. I wonder if it hasn't been talked about, but that's got to happen, especially what's happening. I mean, what's happening during they have the endoscopy where you go in through the bottom, right? What's that? Is that just called the endoscopy, or is there a more specific term?
Yeah. Well, upper endoscopy. I think they're both called endoscopies in a way, but they just call
Are they scopies? I'm saying scopy.
I said scopy for a long time, and then my doctor corrected me, and I was like, oh, look at you with the degree.
I like to call it endoscoopy.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
That's a nice one.
Yeah. Scoopy the poopy, because you have to use a bunch of laxative before. So I don't know. So they pump you full of air, and how do they stop that air from coming out too? Like what is it that's stopping you from farting all that air out while you're under? I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just wonder if
maybe it is. Maybe it's farting out, into their face while they're doing it.
Right. And what if it was like, what if it was like so loud Like the fart was so loud and like juicy, perhaps, and people know the sound. When I say juicy, people instantly can hear that sound. That it like that the doctor accidentally like killed the patient. I mean, would there be like a lawsuit? Like, let's say they're like got a scalpel, and they're cutting in, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh shit, what was that?" And the scalpel just goes whoop, right into the heart, and
Yeah, you're dead.
yeah, I wonder if there'd be like a lawsuit, and like, what would the death certificate read? Would it be like death by flatulence or like a fart attack? Like, what would it be?
Fart attack, that'd be
Yeah,
good.
fart attack.
Um, uh, yeah, I'm not thinking of any better fart puns than that.
Yeah.
But that's likely.
Well, that's what
yeah.
happens when you
I
have
could see
like
that.
7 days to come up with a fart pun,
Yeah,
and you only have like 10
that's
seconds.
right. Yeah, and then the doctor, of course, and then he's on trial, and now he's got the farting lawyer,
It,
and
it's a
then you get the farting
constant.
judge.
Yeah, the farting
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
judge. Everybody, like, yeah. I mean, I guess if everybody farted, then nobody would care, would they? If everybody in the courtroom was farting,
Yeah.
then would anybody care? They'd just be like, "Oh, I guess we're all gassy." I mean, it probably wouldn't be a good. They would need some windows open, I think. Are there windows in courtrooms? I don't even know.
I think
I
so.
think
I
so,
think
right?
so.
There. I mean, it seems like you'd have like you don't want to like. I don't know. You want to let some
Some
light in.
natural light. You want to,
Yeah.
yeah, some natural
Do you
light.
think anyone could be killed by farts? Like, let's say you like lock them in a room with a vent, and that a bunch of people just fart in it, like bare-assed fart.
I think you could, but not as a side effect of what's in the farts, but by the displacement of the
The oxygen
important,
and the
like the oxygen. Yeah,
right.
yeah. I
Too
think
much
that would be
methane
the real.
and not enough.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like, because I was thinking like what if you just directed the vent into their mouth and it'd be like an ass to mouth fart, and it'd be like
yeah, like a centipede fart situation.
yeah, like a human centipede type situation. Like that would be.
Yeah,
Except that one was a little worse because they were actually going to the bathroom in their mouths. Great movie.
yeah.
No, not a good movie. I wouldn't recommend that. You said you saw it though, didn't you? Right? But you wouldn't watch it again, would you? I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't watch it.
All
It's
right.
I was
Brandon's gonna watch it later.
my eyelids were paper clipped open, and I had to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's like, could you imagine like a nightly news segment opening with like, and tonight, the silent killer, Grandpa's farts, or something like that, like where they would just. I think it would just be hilarious. First of all, I've never heard anything like that. But one more thing before we get back to the pod. Do you think we'll ever be able to fart and like create a being from a fart, like a butt baby sort of thing, and then maybe like a gas entity that grants wishes and lives in a bottle, like a fart genie? You think that will ever happen?
But I'm not sure how to answer this. I think that the obvious answer is yes,
Yeah.
but
Excellent.
I just want to know: are they going to be illegally voting, or are we going to grant them citizenship? How's that going to work?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have a problem with that, aren't we?
Yeah, that's a whole new category. And we just went through this.
Yeah, I don't
and
know
now
what
we
they
gotta go
would
through
put
this
under
again.
for like race or like or like nationality. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it's a genie and it just lives in a bottle, it's a fart genie. And then it would probably only do one wish because once you let that fart genie out, it's gonna go away.
Yeah, dissipates.
Yeah. So I guess you probably wouldn't need it to vote. All it does is just it's like a Meeseek from Rick and Morty. Like all it does
Right,
is
yeah.
just grant that wish or make that thing happen for you, and then it ceases to exist. What a wonderful character, Mr. Meeseeks. All right. All right, well, let's get back to the pod. That was our fart discussion there that we had from my 3 a.m. thoughts. Just one more time, though. Can we...
It's discussion time. Discussion time. Matt says something crazy. Matt says something weird. Brandon has to say things. Discussion time is here. Meow.
Such a great meow. That is a really good... would you call it a falsetto?
Yeah, falsetto. I like the line that just says Brandon has to say things.
Yeah, not a lot you can rhyme with crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like,
Brandon just has to say
yeah, he just
things.
has to say
He's got
it's something where I say weird fucking stupid shit, and Brandon just has to respond to that. Basically,
I gotta
he has
respond.
to respond. That's the rules. All right. We're going to get back into the 2020. Can I say these words? The 2024 presidential election. Not a lot more to really look at. What I want to look at is what the polls said in 2024, because polling has been notoriously, well, Trump has been notoriously underpolled, as in where he always performs better than the polls usually do. So let's go look into the. Here we go. So these are what the polls said on the final polling from 2024. And just to kind of let people know, up here you can see that in 2020 Biden had a 7.2 um, lead in the polls, but Trump still outperformed that. Biden only won by 4.5. And then you look at 2016, and Clinton had a 3.2 lead going into the election. And well, actually, I guess I don't know why it says Clinton here. I guess what they're meaning is the popular vote. So she did win the popular vote, but obviously Trump bit into that. He's bit into more of it recently than he did in 2016. But and then obviously winning the popular vote last year. So you look at these final results. Trump, and these are the results that happened. He won the vote by 49.8%. Harris had 48.3%. So Trump won the vote by 1.5. Now you look at his average lead, and it was only 0.1. So once again, being better than the polls. Also, let me show another one here. And this one's going to do more of a state by state thing. There it is. Okay. So this is just kind of what the polls were saying per state. So obviously we have the national level, and in these polls that were the last poll, November 4th, I think these are these all the same poll? Well, it's under 270 to win. Okay. Harris actually had a lead nationally, 48.4 to 47.2. So she had a 1.2% lead nationally. As we know, she did not win. You look at some of the states here, and really we should look at the polling for some of the swing states. Like you take a look at, here, the first one here is Georgia. Trump had a 1.2% lead. In Arizona, Trump had a 1.2% lead. But then you go down to Michigan, Harris actually had a 1.8% lead in Michigan in the polling. And then we go down to Pennsylvania, and that was a tie. And then you go down to, which one am I missing? Or was that it? Did I do all five? Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Oh, no, Wisconsin is what I wanted to look at. Where is Wisconsin? Where did you go? All right, there it is, way up here. And Harris had a lead in Wisconsin. So if these polls would have been accurate, I'm pretty sure that Wisconsin and Michigan were not enough for Harris to get the win. Because Trump is leading in Arizona and Georgia, and there was a tie in Pennsylvania. So really it came down to Pennsylvania, I think, was the big state that Harris had to win for that to work. So those are just kind of some interesting polling numbers. And then what we're going to look at is anything. Do you want to look at any state? Does anything stand out to you? And I mean,
No, I just want to dig into some discussion on what you think it means that polling numbers didn't reflect.
I think that I don't, I don't know. There's a certain Trump effect, and what I've heard from certain scholars and historians and people like that, or that's what they say they are. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Maybe they work as cashiers. I don't know. What I've heard is that there is a portion of the voter base that doesn't want to admit that they're voting for Donald Trump. And I don't know if that's true. But there seems to be something there where somebody is not saying the right thing. Polls aren't always, polls have been wrong before, obviously. It's not like this is the first time, in 2016, even since Trump, they've been wrong before 2016 as well. I think they're just more accurate to poll when Trump is not on the ballot. There is some kind of Trump effect happening. Besides what these scholars and some historians or whatever are saying about people not wanting to know, or maybe maybe it's more like they're just more like they're more in secret with their decision. They just don't want to tell people who they're voting for. It doesn't have to necessarily mean because they're ashamed or anything. It just means that they don't want to tell people. There's a lot of people like that. I remember talking to people about politics when I was younger, and there would be adults who would be like, "Well, no, I'm not going to talk to you about that." It's just like, oh, and it was really weird to me that they just didn't want to like talk about politics. But I kind of get it now. But there are just people that don't want to discuss it. It's kind of like their own secret thing. But do you have any theories or?
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is probably it seems likely. Yeah. I think that there is there's a lot of like pop culture. I don't know if pop culture is the right way to define this, but Trump Trump is generally made fun of on a lot of more people in pop culture is how I see it. I don't know if that's actually true statistically, but more people in like the Hollywood circle or in like the TV like late night shows or like hosts or things like that. So it's more common for Trump to be at the butt of the joke, and I wonder if there is a sense amongst people that like and there's also a reputation of Trump voters to maybe be like lower intellect or things like that. So I bet there is a certain amount of people that don't want the stereotype of a Trump voter, but maybe still were. So I sense that could be true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's probably what it really comes down to. And I think you're 100% right at that. I think that, and they're probably people that don't fit the normal norm of who would vote for Trump, right? They're probably people who may have voted independent or may have voted Democrat or just don't want people knowing that they because of what they're seeing, that they're like, oh, Trump's kind of a joke here or there or whatever. And maybe I don't want or maybe they just have a friend base that's mainly Democratic. And they're like, well, shit, I don't want to talk to these guys about it. So I get it. It is kind
Yeah.
of a weird effect that's happened with Trump on the ballot, and I think they've caught on to that. I think they know that when he's on the ballot, people turn out to vote. There's been a higher turnout, and and he's usually beaten the polls in most places, and so it's just kind of interesting. Um, what I did want to look at is the issues of why people voted. So we're going to get into that. And like we talked about before, a lot of the issues were, well, here they are. The economy was all voters, out of all voters, 81%, this number here, represented like what their main issue was voting on for. And as you can see, that was a huge number with Republicans. 93% of Republicans voted. So like that was their number one issue. And then you can kind of see where the polarization is with these issues as well. So the economy, only 68% of Harris supporters thought the economy was a big issue, where 93% of Trump supporters thought it was. And then you kind of have a reverse with healthcare, where 76% of Harris supporters thought that was more important, and only 55% of Republicans. Supreme Court appointees, obviously, that was more Democrats were worried about that, considering that it is obviously more favored in the Republicans right now. And then foreign policy was, you can see that these are kind of things that's always around the platform. Foreign policy, obviously. So the Republicans were more worried about that. Violent crime, the Republicans were more worried about that. And immigration was huge, 82-39, as far as Trump supporters being 82% worried about immigration. So amongst Republicans, immigration was the second biggest thing that they were worried about. But among Democrats, it was what? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. It's last on this list at 39. And of all voters, it's, what, one, two, three, four, five, it's sixth. Well, tied for fifth with violent crime. So just kind of interesting. And then gun policy, kind of close. Racial and ethnic inequality, that's kind of in climate change. I mean, these are all things that are normally down party lines anyway. So you kind of know like that those are the issues that people are voting for. And so Anything surprise you there, or is that kind of what you figured?
I think it's close to what I figured. It's the climate change one is a really huge divide as well. It's easy to gloss over it because it's not it doesn't stand out as important amongst the most important issues that are listed here.
Right.
But as far as the divide, it might actually have the largest divide out of all those
Yeah, 51
in
point
terms of
difference there. And I think you're
yeah.
right. I think it does have the largest divide. And it kind of, you look at the numbers there and you see what the highest number for the Dems there, Harris supporters, was healthcare at 76. Next was Supreme Court appointees at 73, and then economy, and then abortion, and then climate change. So among Harris supporters, climate change was fifth among being the most important thing for them to vote on, whereas you can clearly see among Trump supporters, it was dead last. Um,
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that that's how polar opposite they were. That means that that's how little they cared about it, right?
exactly.
That's basically
Yeah.
how to read this chart.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it does represent, like, obviously the polarization of a lot of these issues. But in a sense of voting, obviously for all voters, the economy was the number one thing. And then healthcare, Supreme Court. So you go down the list. Um, it's just weird to me because there was a lot of people that said immigration was number one. Now, immigration is number two on the Trump supporters list. It's quite, I think it's number 10 on this list for Harris supporters. There are 10 things here, right? Yeah. Um, so it is interesting to me that even with all that, immigration is still basically, fourth or fifth down on this list at 61. So that's kind of interesting. But economy was the big thing, and we all know why with the inflation and all that thing and all that stuff. So that was definitely something that was going to be voted up upon. So, and then you've got here about 7 in 10 voters say 5 or more issues are very important to their presidential vote. Um, and so this is kind of a hard graph to read. What am I looking at here? Okay, I see. So these are the issues. So 5 to 7 issues Harris support. So Trump supporters actually had quite a significant amount of issues that they were worried about, less than in a way less than Harris supporters when you look at it. 68% of Trump supporters had 5 or more issues, whereas never mind, that's actually the exact same. 60 No, it's not. It's 70%. So Harris supporters had a little bit more. It's this 8 to 10. My goodness, 8 to 10 issues? That's a lot of issues to think about when you're,
It is, yeah.
but it's kind of what happens, I guess. All right, so that's just kind of that. The last thing we're going to look at is we are going to look at, let me just look at this really quick. Immigration has increased in importance among Republican voters. Abortion surge in importance for, yeah. So this kind of just tells you where they've gone in the last 4 years, and immigration has been huge, jumped up from 61 to 82 amongst Republican voters. So in that sense, you can see that, and with the economy, why Trump got elected, because those were huge issues with those people. All right, so we are going to look at now. The last thing I want to look at is the latest polls, just to kind of see where we're at from a year ago and see if people are thinking differently now about, how they voted, whether it was one way or the other. And so these are kind of what I really want to look at here is more, you look at these things here on the side. President Trump's job approval is at 43% right now. This number here, the 36.1, let's look at this. Oh, can we not? The direction of the country, which is been quite low for a while. This is only like this month, but it's 20, negative 20% with the spread here. So a lot of people don't feel like the country's in the right direction, but I feel like that's been like that for like 8 years. Like it's either one side or the other that's like, oh, it's bad. So we don't want to deal with that. But and then, what else we have here is just kind of what people are expecting in 2026 midterms. Right now, we have a generic congressional vote where it's almost +5 in Democrats' favor. And the Senate vote, do they have the Senate on here? I don't see the Senate. I just see states in the Senate. But just kind of interesting, obviously there are some things that people really like about Donald Trump. There are some people that don't like about Donald Trump. How do you feel? We'll kind of make this like our wrap up point here, but how do you feel that people feel about, do you think that, let's do it this way. If the 2024 election was redone and held today, what do you think would happen?
Against
Same
Kamala
people.
Harris?
Yeah, same people. Like if they said, okay, we're just going to, like, let's say for some weird reason we had elections every year. Okay. And Trump got
Yeah.
elected last year. And now this year we're having another election. Do you think he would win again? Do you think it'd be by as big as a margin? Do you think Harris would cut into that at all? Do you think anything he's done in the last year has affected, would make him get a bigger or less count?
I think that there's a lot of smart entrepreneurial wealthy business owners that supported him based on perceived economic qualities and positions that he had, and that what he did around tariffs was so like I've heard defenses of that, right? Of like, well, you when you're negotiating, you have to set a certain standard and then you negotiate back from that, right? You have to set 100% tariff and then you can negotiate for the 40% tariff that you actually wanted, when before maybe it was at 30% and you thought it should be 40, but you start off at 100. I've heard of that kind of defense, but I think that his general approach to it has unnerved a lot of people. And so I think that has had a negative effect from those types of supporters. I also think that what he is, and then I think secondly, another major one is the Epstein situation, has really, I think there has been a fair amount of people that are very unhappy with how the entire Epstein situation has been handled and the obvious flip flopping that Trump and his administration has had on the importance of releasing those files. Where it was a campaign issue. Like, it wasn't just an issue that he had stated, like, yeah, I'm going to release it. And then, well, are you guys still talking about this? It was actually a campaign issue, like, that helped him, I think, get elected.
Right.
And so if he was up for election now, I don't know. I think that he would have, he could lose. I think he could lose. I don't want to say I'm very, very certain he would lose because I don't know how he would pivot during his campaign approach to account for his current perception and the current climate of things. And also in light of, I still think Kamala Harris was a weak candidate to put against him. I think that, but I do think that the chances of him losing are greater. So
This would be like the
yeah, that's my
second
position on
time
that.
around for Kamala, though, right? So, like, would people be able to embrace that more? But I totally get what you're saying. And it is kind of hard to just, these are all hypotheticals. It's hard to predict this stuff. And you and I are certainly not political commentators. We're just, throwing stuff out there and trying to see, what hits. But I agree with you. I think that there are certain things. I think the main thing you got to look at is the fact when we had looked at like the demographics of the people voting, and we said, oh, he got a big chunk of the black voters, the Hispanic voters, and the Asian voters this time around. That he did way more than any other time. Now, how are they feeling? Because I feel like those three categories are what won him the race. So how are they feeling? I do feel like there's a lot of Hispanic people out there that feel like he's gone too far with the immigration. Now, I will say there's been over 170 people that have been arrested that were U.S. citizens and detained and then let go, but they weren't allowed to talk to lawyers. This is what I read. Sorry, whether or not it's 100% accurate, but they're detained. And so that's kind of, not a good look. Not to say that hasn't happened in other presidencies. Certainly U.S. citizens have been detained, but I think these people don't ask a lot of questions. So I think they get stuck in areas longer and they have to deal with this and they don't get to see a lawyer. There's been pictures out there about like what the detention centers look like and how there's kids sleeping on concrete floors. I don't know. But so I think that might have affected some of the Hispanic things. I think that the black voter, I think that they might be a little more angry. I think there's ones out there that are okay with whatever he's done. But then the whole fact that I think it really comes down with immigration. Is it too hard of immigration that he's doing? Because I think there was a lot of people who just felt like he was going to go after drug members and things like that. But anytime you look on TV or you see something on Facebook or Reddit or a video pops up or whatever it is of somebody getting detained, it's not. I don't think I've ever seen anybody. I've seen them say that they were part of a drug gang, like a gang or something, but I've never seen them actually do it. So I wonder, it's like, well, what happened to just going after the ones that are like really causing the issues and the problems? And then just over 70% of everybody that's been detained has no criminal record. So you wonder, it's like, well, what are you doing here? And a lot of these people, like we talked about before, were taxpayers and they were paying taxes. So what do you think's going to happen to everybody else when you take $100 billion out of the system? Um, because you're being taxed. You're gonna have to make up for those taxes. That it's kind of like the whole
Yeah.
thing with the ER thing. It's like, well, they shouldn't be able to go to the ER because the other person's gonna have to pay for that because they're not if they don't pay for it. And it's like, well, that you can put that certain example or situation on anything, and it can go both ways. So I do think that it would be a tighter race. I don't know who would win. I don't know. I mean, I would still think that polls now are definitely not in his favor, but he's notoriously always had a bad approval rating, and he still got reelected 4 years later. Not in the same fashion as back to back, but he still got reelected. And Biden didn't have the greatest approval rating either. But so it is kind of interesting because there is some kind of effect there happening where I think there are people that really do like him, and they are like, that's their guy, and it's got to be him or nobody else. And that's kind of like what I mean with the Trump effect. But yeah, it's just kind of
Yeah.
interesting. But that's just kind of looking at all the election. There's a lot of stuff that we threw out at everybody today. And I will admit, after a little while, it does kind of get boring to talk about. I love numbers and I love data, but you know, there's so many things you can spawn off. There's so many different points that you can say, oh, we should look at this and look at that. And we kind of talked about them a little bit. And we could have said, oh, we'll look at this, we'll look at that. And if we were to do that, we'd be here all fucking night, even though it would be kind of fun. But, I don't know. After a while, it does kind of get tedious and boring. But do you have anything that you want to add? A Brandham Lincoln.
Yeah, I just want to say that when is this episode coming out?
This episode will be out on December 2nd.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm gonna. I just realized that, so I'm not gonna say the thing I was gonna say.
Okay.
But I'm gonna say that heading into December, that I hope that everybody has their boots and their gloves ready for those of us who are experiencing lots of snow. Uh,
Yeah.
because I think December is gonna be a good one. Just to have a non-political comment. So
Well, you could have said,
that's my point.
I feel like you were going to
Yeah,
tell people Happy Thanksgiving, but you could have said, because we're obviously
I'm gonna
recording
have a
this
happy.
before
Yeah,
Thanksgiving,
I'm
but
about
you
to.
could have
Yeah,
just said, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. I mean, you could have just said that.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's all right. That's all right. Anyways,
Shoot.
I am Matten Van Buren. He is a Brandham Lincoln, only the best Brandham that there is. And this has been Socially Awkwards. That's who we are. Come join us every week. We'd love to hear from you. Comment, talk to us. Everybody have a great time, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.